The Lost Duchess. Lady Amelia Beaumont, the Duchess of Winslow, was known for her grace and beauty, and for her eccentric habits. She would often vanish into the estate gardens for hours or escape to a quiet corner of her vast mansion, hidden away with a book. So, when she first went missing, her servants thought nothing of it. But as the hours dragged on, unease spread through Winslow Manor. So Reginald, her husband, was growing frantic. He called for Inspector Barnes, a clever but unassuming detective who had solved countless mysteries across the county. Inspector Barnes arrived at the estate the following morning, and his first step was to interview Sir Reginald. "She's never done this before, Inspector," Reginald insisted, pacing anxiously. "Leaving no note, no word. She wouldn't simply disappear." Barnes listened carefully. "Has she been in good spirits recently, Sir Reginald? Any unusual visitors or letters?" Reginald hesitated, then sighed. "She has been receiving letters, strange, anonymous ones. They started a few weeks ago. I thought they were just silly admirers, but maybe." Barnes raised an eyebrow. "Do you still have them?" Reluctantly, Reginald led Barnes to Amelia's study. The detective inspected the letters, each one filled with poetic words about a secret admirer who adored her beauty and charm from afar. The admirer promised to take her somewhere more enchanting than any earthly place. Barnes tucked the letters into his coat and proceeded to interview the household staff. The gardener remembered seeing the Duchess by the garden gate at dusk the day she disappeared. She'd worn a large, dark cloak and had looked different. She seemed nervous, looking over her shoulder, the gardener recalled. Then she hurried down the path toward the woods. Intrigued, Barnes followed the path, which led to a small, secluded pond. Near the water, he noticed faint footprints in the mud, as if someone had waited there. As he was deep in thought, he heard the crackle of footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw Sir Reginald, looking tense. "Inspector, have you discovered anything?" Reginald asked, his eyes shifting nervously. "Perhaps," Barnes replied, eyeing Reginald closely. "Tell me, did you and the Duchess have any misunderstandings recently?" Reginald stiffened. "Misunderstandings? No. I loved Amelia deeply." Barnes let the silence stretch, watching as Reginald's face turned pale. After a moment, he continued his investigation, heading back toward the estate. Hours later, Barnes found himself alone in the Duchess's study once more. He turned his attention to the fireplace, where he noticed a faint smell of burned paper. Gently brushing through the ashes, he uncovered the charred remains of one final letter. It was barely legible, but enough words remained, *, my beloved Amelia. Meet me by the pond. Escape. Together. *, it seemed the Duchess had arranged to meet her secret admirer after all. The next morning, as Barnes prepared to report his findings to the police, he received startling news. The Duchess had been found alive in a distant village. According to her statement, she had indeed planned to meet someone by the pond, but it was not a lover. It was her husband, Sir Reginald. "Sir Reginald?" Barnes asked, stunned when he spoke to her at the village inn. "Yes," she replied, her voice shaky but determined. "He'd been hiding his true self for years. But I discovered his secret, Inspector. He planned my disappearance." With horror, Barnes realized that the letters from the admirer were Reginald's doing. He had written them to lure her out, intending to make it look as though she'd run off with a lover, thus freeing him from his marriage while ruining her reputation. Amelia's story was barely believable, but as Barnes escorted her back to Winslow Manor, Reginald was nowhere to be found. Days later, he was discovered on a ship bound for America, his plan thwarted and his fortune left behind. In the end, it was not love or longing that had led to the Duchess's disappearance, but a dark scheme to ruin her. And the Duchess returned to her estate not as the lost noblewoman, but as a survivor who had uncovered the dark secret behind her own disappearance.